Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul. I've got the centerfold for my Detective Comics number 59, and we're doing a continuing series on conservation of this book. I've got a little dog ear here that I just noticed. I'm going to see if I can't just do a little correction on that while I'm chatting. And last episode, you saw me make a staple that I said I was going to try out in the book. I think it looks like it's going to work reasonably well. But while I was looking at the book, it reminded me that, when we did our initial assessment, we saw this. There's tape here and here. This tape was underneath the arms of the staples. So while that doesn't prove that those staples were manufactured later and not original, it adds to my belief that they probably were manufactured later and not original, because they were minimally at least opened up. The tape was put down and then they were closed back up. We know that at least because this tape was underneath the arms, right? By the way, I don't think this tape was necessary. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations where somebody added tape, basically, what they thought they were doing prophylactically or just out of an abundance of caution. And then over time, it actually destroys the book anyway. If you look at the paper, it does not appear as though the centerfold was loose at all. Right? This paper appears to be intact. There's a tiny little punch through right there. Maybe a little punch through right there. But this paper looks like it was completely intact. And some well-intentioned person in the past for this book added tape to this centerfold underneath the staples for no very good reason other than they thought they would strengthen it for the future. And of course, as we know, the tape is actually weakening it because the tape residue will be penetrating the book and eventually turning the paper yellow and brittle. So we have to deal with this. I've got choices. I could do, as you've seen me before, a hexane bath or a xylene bath or some combination of the two. I don't like to do xylene bath because the xylene is very volatile. It's really pretty nasty. Hexane is manageable in terms of a whole bath. So I tend to do xylene just in spots. Since these are tiny pieces of tape, I'm leaning toward just doing spot hexane. The problem with that is it can create tide lines. So this paper, this is the inner newsprint. It's very absorbent. If we wet this with hexane or xylene or Undo or any of the solvents we know will work reasonably well here, there's a reasonable likelihood of creating tide lines around here. And those tide lines, once they set in, are very difficult to remove, even if you do a full bath for the whole page. So both sort of approaches are not without some amount of risk. But what I'm going to try to do, I think, is hit these just with a spot treatment. And what I'm going to plan to do is actually apply from the back a solvent, try to keep it right here, and then flip the book and try to remove the tape carrier. And then once we have the tape carrier, if we have any adhesive left behind, we can deal with that. So I'm going to get set up to do that. All right, I've got the tools we need now. I've got a beaker with a little bit of Undo adhesive remover in it. I've got a syringe, like I showed you before. This is a 3mm BD syringe with an 18 gauge needle. I believe it's an inch or an inch and a quarter long. And I've got my stainless steel spatula. And what I'm gonna do is, I guess a couple safety precautions here in order. One, undo is volatile. Use in a well-ventilated area. Two, if you're not comfortable working with syringes, be aware of needle safety. I am. So I'm just going to put a little bit of undo. I'm going to try to limit it to just this area underneath the tape. And I'm applying it from the backside because we know it'll go through the paper easily enough. I want to see if it'll go through this carrier and get me where I need to be. Because it will not go through the carrier well. All right, that worked very well. I also have some forceps here. So I was able to remove the carrier, the plastic backing. There is some adhesive there. We do have a tiny tide line, see that? Even just from that little bit. Okay, so we'll have to still deal with that adhesive, but we got the carrier off, and that's what's important here. And you see how quickly, if you do this correctly, that works. There is no need to soak these things in solvent for hours or even minutes. You saw that it works literally in seconds if it's done properly. That should be all that's required regarding the solvent. It's volatile. You see it's already drying, right? And we're going to go in there and try to get underneath the tape. All right. I don't like the way that sounds. It sounds like paper fiber is not liking to be moved. So it's dried off too much already. Also, I realize it's more on this side. So I'm going to just wet again this area. And I'm going to keep it on this side of the crease. I'm just going to try to get to it a little bit quicker this time. And you see when I did that, it just came right off, no problem. All right, so I have two pieces of tape. The plastic part, again, what is technically called the carrier. Some people call the backing, and those are off now. Now we will work on trying to remove the adhesive without having it absorb too much into the paper. So I'm going to need a few different tools. I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so what we have now, I have a paper towel. This is actually one I'm reusing. This was used for cold pressing, and I'm going to use this now just to get the adhesive off my scraper. I have my scraper tool, which you've seen me use before for removing adhesive. And we still have the undo in this beaker and in this syringe. So how do we know that we still have adhesive there? Well, I can see that there's a yellowness. Also, if I look at it with incident light, it looks shiny. But here's the best test. If you touch it, it's tacky, okay? And that's the best test. So we're going to be attempting to remove that. And I think I'll put another paper towel so I can rest my hand on one and use the other one for any adhesive. So this adhesive is not actually super soluble in undo in my experience. It's much more soluble, for example, like in, say, xylene. We can use that to our advantage. So this is one of the things I mentioned earlier about you don't want to soak, to remove tape, you do not want to soak paper in a solvent for 30 minutes. The reason why is because you'll actually solubilize this adhesive, and then it will be driven down into the paper and it will be impregnated within the paper. Right now it's sitting on top of the paper. And instead of making it totally soluble, where it would be soaked into the paper and spread out just like we see this tide line, we would like for it to actually stay sitting on top of the paper, and we will gently remove it physically, and that is going to allow us to not have it in the paper. That's one of the reasons why you want to do this work quickly and with a minimum of solvent time. I'm going to flip this around, and the reason for my doing that is that on looking at this, as we recall, the tape was really mostly on this page. I don't want to have to come across that crease with my tool. I think my tool is going to work better if I can approach this way and get the residue off. So that's going to be my goal here. I'm going to put just a little bit of this solvent and try to get it to sit mostly on top of the residue, the adhesive. And I'm going to try to scrape the adhesive up. And remove it. And I'm not sure how well we did. I think I may need to change my lighting around so that I have some magnification of what I'm doing. So let me do that. All right, hopefully my camera will stay focused here on the work and not on my light source. But now I've got my ring light set up with my magnification, and what I can tell is that I did successfully sort of roll up a lot of the adhesive, but it's kind of stuck right here by this staple hole. So I'm going to go in and just attempt to remove that adhesive without losing any of this paper. And that definitely was successful in that regard. So we're going to repeat this process. You may recall from watching me do this on the cover that it's a somewhat tedious process and that it's very slow going. I'm going to try to preserve that first staple hole. Push any adhesive down without taking too much in terms of paper fibers. It's a tiny bit tacky now, but most of the tackiness is gone. But we took a little bit of paper fiber with that. I don't love it. This doesn't seem to be very tacky over here now. Very minimally, almost not. There's a little bit of tackiness here. So I'm going to come in and try to just lift a little bit more tape adhesive from here. Yeah. And I did take some more paper fiber with it. Again, which I don't love. I removed the adhesive almost entirely. There's a little bit still there. I'm just trying to get up the very last of the adhesive here. That's having the paper be just a little bit tacky to the touch, which you could hear, I think. I don't think much more could be done, but much more doesn't need to be done. There's a tiny bit of tackiness there, but this is all the adhesive removed. But remember, it was a tiny piece of tape. So I've twisted this around for the same reasons in terms of I want to come at that adhesive from this side. We'll see if we can't do a slightly better job here. But again, maybe that adhesive, between the adhesive and the carrier, it was kind of hiding paper damage. Maybe it was already a partial. Yeah, and I can see it here. It was already a partial pull through. So maybe the tape wasn't there completely prophylactically. Maybe it was actually there to mask a popped staples on the centerfold. That's what it's looking like. I think that adhesive rolled up really well on this side. There's still some tackiness there. I think I need to let the undo dry so that we can see where it is. Yeah, as it's drying, I can now see where there's some residue left, some adhesive residue. And then retest the tackiness. Okay, there's a tiny bit of tackiness left right in this area. What I'm doing now is I'm just using my finger to kind of roll up any little bits of adhesive that are left there. They make a tool for this actually called a crepe square. You can also use a specific eraser for it as well. Art gum erasers are good for this. But I always try my finger first, and if it works, I'd rather use my finger because I just have much better feedback. The crepe square can pull the paper a little bit too much and can rip it. Okay, I don't even know if these are, for the camera can pick them up. They're teeny, tiny, small balls of adhesive that I have now effectively removed and completely removed the tackiness from these two surfaces. Technically, I guess one surface, two areas of that surface. And we've exposed some paper that does look like it had some damage. Looks like maybe half the staple was pulled through here. Could I put this together without Tengu gel? I certainly could. I'll make a decision on that, and we'll show the book coming back together. So I'll do that off screen and get back soon.